Welcome everyone to Taller Chico Mecoa, the Esperanza's first session of a virtual cooking workshop that uses indigenous and traditional Mexican ingredients. So my name is Judith. I am from the Esperanza, and this evening we have with us Dr. Liliana Saldaña, who is a Chicana activist scholar from San Antonio, Texas, and an associate professor of Mexican American Studies. I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone because I can hear a lot of background. So, so she teaches at UTSA, and she teaches courses on Mexican American history and culture, and her research draws from from Chicana studies, Chicana feminist thought, and decolonial theory to examine teacher identity and consciousness, epistemic struggles in education, and decolonizing schooling practices. She's also a board member of the Esperanza Peace and Justice Center, and a fantastic cook I've learned a lot just in the very short time that I've been around her cooking. And so go ahead, Liliana. You can unmute yourself. Oops.
Okay. Hello, good evening, buenas noches, buenas tardes. It's so wonderful to see this beautiful community here through Zoom. And I can't thank you enough for supporting the Esperanza Peace and Justice Center, for supporting what is a passion of mine. And I just want to share a little bit about Taller Chico Mecoat. Taller Chico Mecoat is named after the Mexica goddess Chico Mecoat, who was represented sustenance, especially corn. And so as someone who grew up with corn, and as far as I remember, my grandmother used to make tortillas de maíz on my mother's side and sell it at the mercado in Monterrey. And I think about my paternal grandmother, Esperanza, who would make tortillas de maíz, and she would cook the corn, nixtamalize it. She would send my dad to go look for cal. And sometimes when they didn't have anything other to eat but corn and quelites, that's what they survived on. And so for me, Taller Chico Mecoat represents the resilience of indigenous foods and the resilience of our own communities as we continue to sustain our foodways, as we continue to dismantle systems of settler colonialism. And so why indigenous plant-based foods? I am vegetarian. I have a history of diabetes in my family. So this is one way in which I have come to not only take care of myself, but also take care of my family and share the knowledge now with others as I learn, because I'm very much a learner. Right now, I see myself as a learner, and it is an honor to be able to share this conocimiento with all of you this evening. So this taller is also about establishing a relationship to this continent, right? Establishing an understanding of where we fit in relation to other indigenous peoples and the land. And we can establish this relationship through maize, through frijoles, through beans, through squash, calabazas, through chiles, and other plants that have been a part of our ancestral diet for millennia. And so to me, food is a part of our civilizational culture. It's a part of our memory. It's a part of our identity. Y dicen que la comida es la historia de la humanidad, that food is the history of humanity, right? So I begin, it's truly an honor to introduce 3 different salsa recipes that draw from unique indigenous ingredients. And so Judith will go ahead and share the video with the 3 recipes. And I just want to add that I am wearing a mask during the taping of the video, but I think you will be able to hear the audio. And if you have any questions, please make sure that, to jot them down in the chat box. And then after the video, we'll have a plática. So, aquí les presento las 3 salsas, una salsa de guajes, una salsa de pepitas, y otra de choconosles, or joconosles, as some people pronounce it. This is Liliana Saldaña, and I'm a proud member of the Esperanza Peace and Justice Center. On behalf of the Esperanza, I want to thank you for joining us this evening to Taller Chicomecoat, a workshop on Mesoamerican foods and recipes. I also want to thank you for joining us as part of the Esperanza's cultural arts programming during COVID-19. Your support is so incredibly important during this time, as many social justice cultural arts organizations like the Esperanza Peace and Justice Center rely on the generous support of the buena gente. So today I am going to share 3 recipes: salsa de pepitas, salsa de guajes, and salsa de choconosles. So we'll begin with salsa de pepitas today. So for the salsa de pepitas, we're going to use 3 tomatoes, 3 jitomates, 2 habaneros, and half an onion, and a cup of pepitas. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to roast the tomates, or the jitomates. We're also going to use 2 habaneros, and depending on your preference, you might want to use 3, but I use 2 just because I don't like my salsas to be super hot, but I like the flavor of the habaneros. And then we're going to use 1 cup of toasted pepitas. So we got to make sure that we roast the tomatoes and the habaneros first. Are so good for you. The pepitas, I love calabaza. Calabaza is one of my favorite foods, and it's a Mesoamerican food. Archaeologists believe that calabazas were cultivated in present-day Mexico and Central America as far as 10,000 years ago, and indigenous peoples across the continent began to cultivate these. Every part of the calabaza is used, from the fruit to the leaves to the stems of the calabaza, the squash blossoms, and the seeds. The seeds are an important source of protein, which is why indigenous peoples use them in their cuisine. But it is an important source of protein. It's an important source of magnesium, zinc. That are so incredibly good for you. And so what we're going to do right now, as the tomatoes roast, is we're going to blend. So as the tomates are roasting with the habaneros, we're going to put the pepitas in the blender until we get them into. And as we get the powder out, this is actually what I do to make my pipián, either my green mole or my red mole. I use about the same amount of pepitas, and I do the same process. So I toast them, and then I use my Vitamix to grind them, or you can use the molcajete too, which I have here. So we're going to use half of an onion. So I like to save the ends of the onion for my vegetable broth. I'm a vegetarian, so I like to use all the ends of all the vegetables I use, and I keep them, I store them in my freezer. You can even use the skin, right? There's no need to throw it away. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slice them thin, into thin slices, and then we're going to chop it. Okay, now it's up to you. I mean, I like my salsa de pepitas chunky, so this is what I do, right? I chop them into small pieces. Here, I'm gonna put this over here. I can use that for my broth. But you can also put this in the blender. You can roast your onion and blend it with your tomate, with your habanero. So it's completely up to you. Todos tenemos nuestros propios gustos y pues nos gusta la comida de cierta manera, con sus texturas. Okay, so this should be enough. This is a little tough, so I'm going to... I also like to add cilantro. So if you have cilantro, I like to add mine at the end. So I'm just going to continue chopping the onions here until they're a little finer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to deseed the habaneros. Now, what I've learned from the habaneros is that they're also indigenous. The habanero is also from the Americas. I read somewhere that they were actually from South America. They made their way to present-day Cuba. And then from Cuba, they made their way to the Yucatan, where they're actually used quite a bit in the cuisine of the Yucatan Peninsula. So habaneros are used quite a bit in Mayan cuisine. And so we're going to deseed them. Porque si yo le tengo miedo a las semillas de los habaneros. So the tomates are ready, so we're going to put them in the blender with the habaneros. I can put a little salt, but you just want to put a little bit of salt because the pepitas I have already had salt. So it just depends what kind of pepitas you buy. You might buy pepitas that are already salted or unsalted. So let's go ahead and so this is ready. So we're gonna pour the salsa, the puree, the tomato habanero puree. I mentioned you can actually add the onion in here, but I like my salsa a little chunky. And I'm gonna fold a little bit of the pepitas in there. You're gonna really love this salsa. I use this in salads. I use this, I like to make a white ayocote salad, or you can use northern beans. You can use the canned beans, and I like to add radishes and celery, cilantro, and I mix it in there. And we're going to add the onion. Now we're going to add the onion. You can add cilantro in here. I like the freshness of the onion. You can add this in your tacos, on your flautas. It's just a different kind of salsa. The pepitas lend such an incredible flavor because of they're toasted, they're so earthy. And I'll add a little bit more. You can add an extra tomate. When I've added the fourth tomate, it makes it a little bit looser. So I prefer tres tomates, 3 tomatoes. So we're going to try this salsita. Wow, it's really good. It's got the perfect crunch. It's flavorful. The pepitas are so delicious. They add an earthy flavor to the salsa. You can use it just as a botana, as a snack. You can add it on your tacos. I'm thinking of flautas de papa with some of the salsa, on your sopes, in a salad. I like to make an ayocote blanco salad, or you can use a northern bean, like a soft, large bean, and this would go perfect with the salad. So thank you. I hope you enjoy the salsa de pepitas. Bueno, para la salsa de choconosles vamos a usar 8 choconosles. For the choconosle salsa, we're going to use 8 choconosles. You can use 6, 7, or 8. Will use 8. I'm going to use the other half of the onion, and we're going to use 2 cloves of garlic. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the choconosles in half. Okay, these are washed. I'm going to cut the ends. And you'll notice that there's some seeds in the middle. So the choconosle is a part of the tuna family. They're indigenous to Mexico, to Central America. We're just going to cut the ends. Okay. The choconosle is a bitter tuna. So my mom was telling me a while back that my grandmother, or my great-grandmother, on my mother's side of the family, my grandfather's mom, Ramona, used to cook her beans, and then we're going to cut them in half, okay? She used to add choconosles in her olla de frijoles, in her pot of beans. My great-grandmother was from the San Luis Potosí. In some regions that they use the fruit of the choconosle, and they dry them, and they make candies with them. You can make a pico de gallo if you want. You can make a salsa, which is what we're going to do right now. So we're going to put this on the comal with our garlic and our onion. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the choconosle, los vamos a asar. So this tuna has a bitter taste. So choconosle comes from the Nahuatl, 2 Nahuatl words, choconosle, which means bitter prickly pear, or tuna agria. And so we're going to roast the onion and our 2 garlic. What I did earlier was I also toasted or roasted some chile morita. So this is the chile morita right here. So we're using 4 of these. So I had put them on the comal earlier for maybe a couple minutes. You don't want to burn them, right? So this is the chipotle morita, or the morita chile, is a jalapeño that's been smoked and dried. So after you put them on the comal for a couple minutes, you don't want them too long. I softened them with some hot water for about 20 minutes. So these are actually ready to use. And we'll put these in the blender. And you can actually put these in the molcajete. You can grind them in the molcajete. They should be soft enough already. But you want to take the stem off. And we'll wait a few minutes until the choconosles are roasted. So our tunas have been roasting for a few minutes, maybe 5. I've been turning them. So at this point, what we want to do is we want to let them cool, because we're going to de-seed them, and then we're going to peel them. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to de-seed
I'm going to use a small knife. If you have a paring knife, that'd be great. And we're going to peel the outer layer, which I learned is rich in vitamin C. So we're not going to use a peel, but we're going to use the fruit of the choconosle. We're going to de-seed them. Make sure that we discard the seeds. It's a very bitter, prickly pear. So I think this is what gives it its distinct flavor. And as I mentioned earlier, you can use this in a pico de gallo, like raw. If you want to just do the same process, like without roasting it, just de-seed them, peel them, and cut them into small pieces. Put it in your pico de gallo. But it has a distinct flavor. So you'll either like it or not like it because it does have that bitter flavor. Hence the name of the fruit, choconosle. And we get as much of that flesh as we can of the fruit. And maybe in our next episode or in our next taller, we can make some frijoles and prepare them with choconosles. What do you think? Let me know what your thoughts are. Okay, so now that we've de-seeded the choconosles and peeled them, as you can see, this is the fruit of la tuna. We're going to add the roasted onion, the 2 roasted garlics that we have right here, and this is the morita, the chile morita. I'm gonna start with 2 because it has such a beautiful, just incredible flavor and scent. The scent of a dried and roasted jalapeno. So I'm gonna add 2 for right now. So we're going to pour the choconosles, the morita. You can even add chile de árbol, maybe 2 for this recipe, for the quantity that we're making right now. We're going to put it in the blender. And we're going to pour it on a plate. You can also use your molcajete. I recommend grinding the moritas first, and then the onion, and then the choconosles. So here is your salsa de choconosles. So our next salsa is going to be the salsa de guaques. These are the guaques that I was able to get close to my house. I was able to harvest them. The guaques are grown in tropical areas in Mexico, Central America. You can probably see varieties of the guaque tree here in the United States. We'll need half a cup of these guaques, and you'll need to de-seed them and then toast them. We'll need about a cup to no more than a cup and a half of tomatillos. I use tomatillo milpero. And then you'll need 2 serranos. And so as we're roasting the tomatillos and the serranos, we're going to de-seed the guaques. Sometimes these are really easy to open if you just kind of gently squish the edges, but you might want to use scissors or a knife to clip the top part, and then they're much easier. They kind of have a very interesting flavor. You can eat them raw, as I mentioned earlier, or toast them. You can even make a very simple salsa. The simplest salsa is just guaques with 2 serranos on the molcajete, and that's it. Okay, so now that these tomatillos and the serranos are roasted, we're going to put them in the blender. You can soak them in water if you want to take off some of the skin. But I'm going to put them in the blender with a little salt and pepper. Just like that. You can also toast the guaques, but I do not recommend toasting them very long. If they start to pop, you've left them on the comal too long. Really, it's just a quick toast, like for a few seconds, and then get them off the comal. So I'm going to blend the tomatillos and the serrano first. Okay, then I'm gonna add the guaques. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt. Let's see.
Muchas gracias. I'd be very happy to take any questions or comments. I hope that you enjoyed the recipes, these 3 salsa recipes.
Will we be able to watch this again?
I believe so, right, Judith?
Yes, we did record this, and so we'll kind of edit out the technical difficulties I had and replay. We can send it to you, or we can I don't know. We'll decide, but we can let you know. And then we will also be sending you the recipes right after this, so you will, if you can check your email. We're going to have another session as well on August 1st. So we will be publicizing that by tomorrow morning, and you will be able to register by tomorrow morning. I'm trying to find any questions. Okay, we have a question from Cristel. Can you use leftover cooked vegetables in making veggie broth, or does it have to be raw?
I usually use raw veggies, but I don't know if anyone else uses already used vegetables for the broth. And I typically use all the ends of the vegetables I use, from like cauliflower to the cabbage, like the outer layer. I rinse it and then save the outer layer, even the garlic. Although in some salsas, I've seen people, I remember when I was in Oaxaca last summer at a food retreat, Doña Enriqueta Contreras uses the garlic skin in the salsas. You know, she just adds them in the blender. You know, she doesn't peel the garlic, because she says that all the nutrients are also on the peel. And the same with the choconosles. I've actually never have made the salsa with the peel, but from some of the studies that I was looking at, they say that the peel actually has high content of vitamin C. So it makes sense to use the peel.
Okay. And then I'm just repeating some questions. I know you answered them in the chat, but about where do you buy choconosles?
Yeah, so that's the thing. So the choconosas, I get them here in town. I have never had a difficult time finding them at La Michoacana. I think they are seasonal though, as guajes. So I was actually able to harvest the guajes for this recipe a couple blocks at a small creek near my house. And so, but I haven't, yeah, I don't know that you can find them like at a large grocery chain, but I know that the small Mexican grocery stores here in town, like La Michoacana, tend to carry guajes. And you can make moles too with guajes. You can make guaxmole. I've never made it myself, but you can make moles. You can add them on your salads. You can eat it as a botana.
Okay. Were there any other questions? Anyone?
Yes, I have a question. First of all, thank you so much, Senora Saldana. So delicious looking.
Thank you.
And I also want to ask, are the joconosles just unripe tunas, like just between green and pink?
They're actually their own variety. So there's about 5 different major variety of tuna. So there's like the sweet tunas that I think most of us are familiar with, the red ones, the green ones, and they have seeds throughout the entire fruit. The choconosles are the bitter tunas. And so the seeds are in the middle. And the outer skin is usually like a yellowish, pinkish, you know, they don't look like the green ones. They don't look like the red ones, but they kind of have like this really unique color, like a little bit of red, a pink, a little bit of yellow and green. But you'll know that it's a choconosle when you cut it in half because the seeds will be in the middle. Now, my nopal tree that I have in my front yard gives choconosles, and those choconosles are red inside. They're kind of greenish on the outside, but the fruit itself is red, and the semillas or the seeds are right in the middle. So that's when you know that you have a choconosle, is when the seeds are all bunched up in the middle.
Thank you so much for that. That's really helpful.
How long does the salsa last?
And you can make it in a pico de gallo. You can eat them raw in a pico de gallo. You can make them into a salsa. And I wonder if you can even make like a veggie ceviche with it, because it does have, it's already has like a not just the bitter taste, but it would lend itself to a ceviche, a veggie ceviche.
We have another question. Are you going to come out with a cookbook or historical anthology?
Maybe one day. I don't know. I would like to. I feel like I'm still learning, and there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn. I mean, I think of like the calabaza, and I was reading an article that said that the earliest that archaeologists have documented the use of calabazas as far as like 10,000 years ago in that cave in Oaxaca, and that indigenous peoples were already storing pepitas. So they knew that pepitas were high in protein. They knew that they could eat the seeds, that they could eat the fruit, that they could eat the stems, that they could eat the blossoms, and you can make like a delicious caldo or sopa milpera with all the milpa fruits and vegetables. But to think that, wow, like our culinary a memory goes back 10,000 years. There's just so much profound knowledge. Ese el conocimiento profundo de la comida. And so I feel like I'm barely learning, but I really appreciate the encouragement, and that's definitely now something that I'm thinking about doing in the future.
Okay, we have another question. Are you aware of the nutritional content benefits of guajes?
Guajes are supposed to be high in protein. And then aquí tengo mis notitas. También, they're supposed to also be high in not just protein, but 28% of the daily percentage of protein you can get in 3.5 ounces of guajes. But I was also reading that they also are good to lower your glycemic level. So they're good for diabetics. The same thing with the choconosles. So they're also, so for me, I'm thinking as a vegetarian, I'm always looking for ways to ensure that I do have, I am consuming protein in my diet. And they're good. They're good for you. And I have a history of diabetes, so that was a turning point for me when I said I need to really start thinking of where I want to be in terms of my body, spirit, mind, and my well-being.
Okay, we have another question. You mentioned the nixtamalization process earlier. Can you please talk a little bit more about that and what the process is?
So I'm not very familiar with that process because I mean, I would love to nixtamalize maize one day. I don't. I have an herb garden. One day, I would love to grow my own food, my own corn, my own jitomates. But from what I've learned from my dad, right? Because my dad has very vivid memories of growing up in Zacatecas, in rural Zacatecas. So the paternal side of my family is from a small rancho outside of Tlaltenango, Zacatecas. And so my grandmother would dry the corn, and then she would cook the corn with cal. So she would send my dad to go look for the cal in the mountains, and then he would bring the cal. She would cook she would cook the maize, and that's the process of nixtamalization. And that's actually an indigenous technology that has persisted maybe for like that 7,000 years.
And I'd like to add, so as far as like nutritionally, when you boil the corn in cal, it makes it more digestible because I don't know if you've met people who eat like a lot of raw corn or, cooked fresh corn. A lot of times it causes digestive problems. And so when you I can't say it, nixtamalize, that increases also the protein content of the corn and it makes it more easily digestible.
Absolutely. And I was reading somewhere, they call it the Columbian exchange, the exchange of the foods and everything. So Mexican, a lot of what we see in other cuisines actually is from Mesoamerica, from present day Mexico, Central America. And I remember reading that when corn made its way, right, through the colonization, made its way to Italy, a lot of people were getting sick from eating the raw corn, and it's because they were not nixtamalizing it, right? So it's important to nixtamalize the corn because your body's able to, as Judith said, to absorb the nutrients and your body's able to digest it.
Well, that's all the questions from the chat. If anyone else has any questions, we still have a little bit of time.
Yes. How long will the salsas last?
I usually let myself, I keep them in the fridge for maybe 3 to 4 days. I think the salsa de pipitas can last maybe, 3 to 4 days. Your salsa de choconosle, the guajes does turn kind of a little of a different color, like not that it changes a completely different color, but it does get like a little dull, like the green. So it might not look as appetizing as when you first make the salsa, but it should be good for like three days.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So exciting to see you in action.
Oh, thank you.
So you're going to be doing this every so often? How often are you going to do it?
So the next taller will be in 2 weeks, so we have 2 more talleres lined up before the semester starts because my life revolves around school, and everything is still broken. And my life is still broken up into semesters. So I'm hoping that we can get 2 more talleres before the beginning of the new semester, and depending on what my schedule can be, I hope to do more talleres. I for sure would love to do a taller on pan de muerto. in like mid-October, so that you have time to practice before Dia de los Muertos. I'm the fourth generation in my family to bake. I still don't call myself a baker, but my mom's a baker. She's been a baker for like, I don't know, 47 years. My grandmother was a baker. My great-grandfather was a baker. So this is something that I would like to share with the community, is how to make pan de muerto. If the Esperanza is okay with that, with me sharing that, I would love to.
Of course, of course. And like I said, our next workshop will be on August 1st, and we will open up registration for that tomorrow morning. So check out our social media, Facebook, Instagram, and the link will be there for the event.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
yes. Can I add just one more thing? The next taller will be on frijoles, because the idea of the taller is to kind of like create building blocks, right, through food. So the salsas is, to me, part of the basic diet, right? Because you have tomates, you have ajo, you have cebolla, and you have other ingredients. And you can also use herbs. I know I saw a recipe for a salsa de papalote, which is a quelite. You can use epazote if you're going to make a green salsa. If you want to make chilaquiles verdes, you can add plenty of epazote in there, which is a quelite. It's an herb. So I mean, this is the salsa is the basis for the moles, right? And so the next taller will be on frijoles, different kinds of beans. I would love to share the receta that it's not going to be the exact recipe of my great grandmother. She used to make her olla de frijoles with choconosles. But if you have any specific recommendations for frijoles, let me know. I'd be very happy to share that. And then our third taller will integrate the salsas, will integrate the frijoles, and will integrate maize at the end, right? So you've already learned one of these salsa recipes of frijoles, and then we can make either tlacoyos or we can make empanadas de chaya with the salsa de pepita. So those are just sort of ideas. Appreciate all the support. The Esperanza appreciates all the love and support, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Mil gracias.